walking specifically with the young men as they get ready to enter seminary. And then while they're in seminary, you meet with them, live with them, and we're really grateful for him. So, Father Richard.
Thank you, Johanna. Can everybody hear me? Okay. I'm sorry, aunque hablo en español, yo no creo que puedo traducir lo que estoy diciendo en inglés. So, but thank you for, I think you might hear some talking over there. They're just going to help simultaneously translate what I'm saying because my brain just can't handle all that. So, gracias a ustedes. So I want to just share with you, and thanks for Joanna for setting all this up, just a little bit about our strategic vision in the Office of Vocations. So through the help of the Scanlon Foundation over the past, honestly, really the last 5 years, we've been developing a strategic plan for our office. And just this past spring, we don't even have everything quite complete, so it's kind of hot off the press. We finished a strategic plan for collaboration. So the strategic plan that's in your booklet, really it's not just for our office, it's for how our office will collaborate with all the other entities, all the other groups out there trying to promote a culture of vocations. What we're really concerned with doing is partnering with your parishes in some way, shape, or form to promote vocations parish by parish. So let me just kind of go through. First of all, we've had this vision for a little while, and I think the 3 main points are kind of summarized there on the side. But it says, with God's help and in collaboration with others, our office longs to see all men and women in the Archdiocese discern their vocation in life. Just to point out that key word, collaboration with others. There's no way our office, I know it's I have more staff than any vocation director in Houston has ever had. I'm very grateful to God and the Scanlon Foundation for doing some of that. But I also want to say, even with 5 other people in the office, there's no way I can effectively cover the Archdiocese and get every person out there, every parish out there to promote a culture of vocations. I can't even get my own brother priest to do a lot of this work and take me seriously. So that's going to be years of work just right there. It's just a reality that there are 1.7 million Catholics in the Archdiocese. There's no way that 5 of us are going to reach effectively even a tenth of that. That's a ginormous number right there, over 100,000 people, so, or just over 1,000 people. So brothers and sisters, I really need help. That's why we're all here today. This office needs help, and there's just no way we're going to do this by ourselves. In fact, I don't even think y'all are going to be able to do this by yourselves. You're going to need help even within your parishes. So just to kind of fill out our mission statement, which has been there for a while, and you might have heard me say this before if you came to one of those town halls in 2019 or something like that. But we're looking for holy seminarians, expert discerners, spirited or inspired volunteers, and unreserved men and women. So those are our points of contact here in the Archdiocese. And of course, as an office of the Cardinal, there's a reality. I know sometimes people say this about well, why don't you promote this vocation, or why don't you promote that vocation? Part of the reality is that we're an office of the Cardinal, and the Cardinal needs diocesan priests that are directly under his authority, who work basically alongside him. It's true that religious priests do that to a certain regard. They're serving under the authority of the bishop, but they have their own superiors, they have their own governing structure, they're usually regional. Cardinal DiNardo has no control over the fact that, for instance, Sacred Heart in Richmond has a new pastor. The order, they're Vietnamese Redemptorists, they decided to move one priest and put him in California, and to move a California priest and bring him here. Cardinal DiNardo, I guess, could just say to the whole order, you have to leave the Archdiocese, but basically, he wouldn't do that. he doesn't really have a say in like who comes and who goes. So there's a little bit of a difference between a diocesan priest to a bishop and a religious order priest to a bishop. Really, the diocesan priests are those whom he has authority over directly. The religious priest is kind of indirect. He can kind of say something to their superior, who's usually in another state or something like that. But so the cardinal needs these priests. Like, that's the bread and butter of his archdiocese, is to have priests who are kind of directly under his authority, who have come through his training programs, come through and see his vision the whole way. The Jesuits, they have a different training program, a different vision, and they operate all over the world, quite frankly. So it's just a little different. Even though we have Jesuits here, they're not really like under the governance of the bishop in a way that we are. So just to kind of point that out, to point out that there's another office of permanent diaconate, and they're the ones, for the sake of the bishop, who handles all of the vocations to the permanent diaconate from beginning to end. And our office really is concentrating, for the sake of the bishop, on fostering diocesan priests. We also know that the bishop wants religious women, consecrated women, and so we help to do that too. But there's a kind of priority list, if you understand, that really at the end of the day, we need holy seminarians. We need lots of them, because there's something about the religious order, like the Jesuits, they're not responsible for the daily life and the sacraments for the Archdiocese of Galveston-Houston. If we don't have sacraments, it's not really their fault. It's the bishop and the seminarians and the priests who are here local and dedicated to the Archdiocese. It's their responsibility to make sure that your kids get baptized, that people get confirmed. It's their responsibility to make sure that people get catechized here in the Archdiocese. It's really us, like Father Zachary, myself, who will, for the rest of our lives, try to labor to better the spiritual good of everybody in this area of Galveston-Houston. So we're trying to get more of those priests because the area needs it, if that makes sense. I know we need more Jesuits and we need more Basilians and things like that, but in general, because we're dedicated to this territory, we're trying to find priests who will also dedicate their lives to this region, to the people in the region. Make sense? Okay. So I just want to tell you that we have this overarching goal, and this is still just part of the office's strategic vision. Basically, we're trying to foster 24 seminarians entering, like new seminarians, by 2025. So Candace just congratulated me. It's actually 12 new seminarians this year, which is good. Last year was 14, so it's a little bit less. Thank you, Candace. But basically, you know, I can't guarantee, like, the number of priests ordained each year, that's a 7 to 10 year project. So it's a very long-term goal. The people who are getting ordained, even this year, I didn't have a hand in having them enter. That was Father TJ. So fancy that. I've been here for 6 years, and I'm still not seeing the men who I helped bring into the seminary get ordained. It takes that long. So like when everybody congratulated me when we had 7 ordinations that year in like 2019, I had nothing to do with it. I just said, thank you. Yeah, that's great. No, that was all Father Dat Huang. And even though he had been long gone as vocation director, the effects of his work were still being seen long after he's gone. So whatever I do, whatever good I do, you'll see it years after I'm not vocation director. Like it takes that long to get a man not just into the seminary, that probably takes 1 to 2 years, but then to get through the seminary and ordained, that's about 10 years, 7 to 10 years. So it's a long-term project, and that's why we never have to, can't really stop doing all this work. We almost envision it like a pipeline. Almost like, I don't know, we like, the vocation director before us left us a lot of sports analogies. If you know Father TJ, he loves things like baseball. But it's true, if you follow the Astros, one of the reasons why we won the World Series, don't think about cheating, don't think about one of the reasons why we won the World Series, it was like 2017, is because, or 2018, 2017, okay, is because in 2012 or something like that, they got a new manager, and that person started recruiting, because we were like the worst team in the American League, recruiting from colleges, getting great draft picks, going to Latin America and finding people like Jose Altuve and training them. And then maybe about 5 years later, they had an incredible team. So it kind of works like that. Like all over the Archdiocese, there are young men and women who have started, like God has put into them since their baptism, a call and building faith and devotion in that young person all throughout their life. Their parents have contributed, their catechists, their priests, and eventually that person gets old enough where it begins to become of interest to them to figure out what to do with their life or what God is saying. That's when the Office of Vocations begins to step in. We can't govern and help and be responsible for the training, the baptism, the parents and the catechism and the early life of faith and development that needs to happen. But that is something that somebody is responsible for, and it's usually called your pastor. Whoever your pastor is, he's the one who's been tasked by the bishop and by God to make sure that those young people have a life of faith and that something is being handed on to them and received. At some point in the Office of Vocations, we imagine we have this like tier 1, 2, 3, 4, almost like a little funnel that out that end, tier 4 out the point, we're like dropping out priests. We never expect that we're going to have that many priests. We hope and pray to God that maybe in 20 years or 10 years, we'll start ordaining like 13 priests a year, which would be just enough to keep us going as an archdiocese because we're still growing. It's not like we're contracting. People are still moving here who are Catholic, and we're still increasing the number of Catholics. Thank God. But before that happens, before you get priests to come out the end of this funnel, you have to have really interested discerners who have a great life of faith. You have to have seminarians. You have to have people who are living a life of faith in the parish, young people who have taken their faith seriously. So we have goals for each of these tiers. But this actually, so there's a funnel for like dropping priests out into the archdiocese, and there's a funnel that has to do with how everybody can help in that goal of getting priests for the archdiocese. And sisters can be part of this too. But that funnel really has to do with, we'll start from the bottom. There are young men who need to be walked with. You can see that in the seminary. In the seminary, we invest so much in these young men. Literally, if you want to talk finances, it costs about $50,000 to $60,000 a year for each seminarian. We have 46 right now. That's a lot of money. The other part of the reality is that there's a lot of personal investment. There are about 5 archdiocesan priests full-time in just trying to form those men to be holy priests. That's a lot. Like your parishes, could they use 5 more priests? Sure, like that would be amazing, right? But the cardinal has decided to remove them from parishes, like Father Urel, who was a pastor at St. Teresa in Sugar Land, and instead of governing and helping, people find faith, like thousands of people, he asked him to help 40 people to find faith. That sounds like a really bad ratio, but that's just how much we have to invest in these young men. We find that if priests walk with these young men to help them become like seminarians or in the seminary, it's really our most effective tool at generating vocations. This thing we call accompaniment, which is basically like walking alongside, helping them grow in their faith, kind of like mentoring or coaching. That out of all the other tools in the tool belt produces priestly vocations more than anything. I found early on in the office that when I didn't pay attention to those people interested in becoming a priest, and I called them back like 6 months later, they were no longer interested. It's just something, I don't know what it is, but if I'm there calling them, checking on them every other week, or if they're coming to events, or they're connecting with a priest like a spiritual director regularly, they're much less likely to be discouraged, picked off by the enemy, or find some other path in life. they're much more likely to find the Lord's will and to follow it faithfully if we invest time in them. So that's something that probably only priests can do. And we're not asking for a lot of other collaborators in that, other than my own brother priest, who, please God, thank you, Father Zach, for being here. I hope that they take interest, and a lot of the young priests do. So I'm very grateful for that, because they're the ones really who are helping me expand my ability to accompany other young people in those very critical moments before they enter seminary and then when they enter seminary. Because those times they need a lot of investments. I tell seminarians, you're a lot like baby turtles. In the nascent stages, everything is trying to eat you and pick you off this beach. But once you make it to the water and past the initial line of predators, you're probably fine. So, but there's some truth to that. Like Satan, for whatever reason, attacks people who are about to apply to seminary and who are just starting seminary more than I've ever seen him attack anybody else. And it's not like he comes with a gun to their door, but I'll put it this way, like it is uncanny how many applicants to seminary got job raises, job offerings, girls who ignored them in college started calling them or direct messaging them. Just all kinds of alternative possibilities begin to pop up. And it's very hard for them, like if their parents begin to say things like, we'll disown you, for them to make those choices to keep going forward. That's where accompaniment is very necessary. Tier 3 is really a point where we're trying to build more of a team. We need people to provide guidance and formation to those young men and women who are beginning to think about their call seriously. And that's where, clergy can certainly serve as a mentor for those thinking about priesthood, but we also know that our young people can't find spiritual directors. They can't find mentors in their faith. I work with a lot of young adults, and they all agree they would love to find a spiritual director. And when they ask us for that, we have like a list of 10 people who already have the maximum amount of what they can handle, and we don't have anybody else, beyond that. So we're actually, there's another lady in the office. Her name is Claire McMullen. She's not here today, but she's trying to basically open a program starting this fall, a pilot program that will train mentors who will train then young people how to pray. So it turns out a lot of young people would love to have one-on-one coaching to develop their prayer life, but we don't have enough of these people. So now we're looking to adults to train mentors to train young people how to pray. So we're trying to expand here, and I know like the Scanlon Foundation is very interested in investing in spiritual direction programs so that the Archdiocese can have more spiritual directors. We do often turn to people in the parish who maybe have a call to be a mentor or a spiritual director, and we want to encourage you, if that's the case, you might take that seriously. Training does take a bit of time. It takes about, even our program takes about 18 months, but a full spiritual director usually takes about 3 years. That's a long time. So if we need them now, we don't have them. We won't have them for 3 years. And so we're just trying in the strategic vision to develop more people who can do that formation and guidance. And so our office is providing formation and guidance to spiritual directors, but we're really trying to get the spiritual directors to then turn and provide formation and guidance to the young people that we work with. Above that, we have another tier where we're trying to get collaborators who can identify and encourage young men and women who are seeking the Lord. So part of the reality is I don't know who has a vocation to be a priest or a religious sister. I really can't see it. It's not like an aura around somebody's person. Sometimes you can see holiness in a young person's heart, and they begin, as they begin to grow in that life of faith, you begin to wonder, like maybe this person who's coming to daily mass all the time, because that's pretty rare that, a young woman or a young man would go to daily mass and take their faith that seriously. Maybe this person has a vocation. We don't know. But to identify that young person is a lot easier for you all who are going to daily mass than for me, who I haven't been to a daily mass at St. Martha's in like 6 years. So I haven't been to a daily mass in St. Lawrence in a long, I don't know, maybe ever. I've been to Sunday masses, but even there, it's hard for me to see those young people who stand out for their faith. And so right now we're trying to encourage people like yourselves who might be involved in the church enough to be able to see these people, but certainly the youth ministers, the young adult directors, people who are on staff might be able to see these people a lot more easily, even than yourselves, and you will be able to talk to those youth ministers a lot more easily than I can. That's part of the challenge, is that there are maybe 150 so youth ministers here in the Archdiocese. They don't always get together, and when they do, you better believe that somebody from our office is trying to talk to them. But the reality is you might be able to find them on a weekly basis, or at least a monthly basis, which is not quite the level of communication, interpersonal contact that our office can do. So being able to identify and encourage those young men and women to take seriously their call is really something that we need your help for. We need the people in your parish who are involved in that kind of ministry to the young adult and to the youth to be able to do that. There are just so many young people here in the Archdiocese that I've never met who don't even know who I am, and to be able to identify them and say, like, you might have a vocation to priesthood or religious life, or at the very least, like, God is clearly moving in your life. Would you like to talk to a priest? I know one that would talk to you. I mean, that would just be great if you could be like a little liaison to connect those young people with the sisters and priests who might be able to help mentor them in these later stages to guide them in their vocational journey. So that's an area of like influence that I think is really key, and also really close to where you are in your parishes. You could do this for us, or you could help the parish do this for us. Finally, in our just general global desires, we're trying to just inform, and basically we want every committed Catholic, every Catholic who's going to daily Mass at least once or twice a week, we want every Catholic who's really trying to live their faith to know what the Office of Vocations, who we are and what we do. Like that's it. That's just a general goal of awareness that we have for the whole Archdiocese. And again, you could help us a lot. After this whole presentation and this day, you'll know what the Office of Vocation does, and you'll know who we are. And you can be our ambassadors out there in a parish, because I guarantee you, like 90% of all your young people have no idea that there's an Office of Vocations that's willing to help them discern their call, that's willing to help them pray, that's willing to help them grow in their faith when they're already like disciples and somewhat on fire for their faith, to really deepen those relationships with the Lord. And if everybody did know, I don't think we would have a whole lot of problems with vocations, because if they ever, like a lot of these young people, they want to connect with somebody who can help guide them. They just have no idea who's out there who can do that. They don't know about our office, so they go to Austin and then they become priests. Anyway, so so we're just trying to broaden awareness. So I'll just kind of cycle through really quickly. The goals here for the Office of Vocations, obviously we're trying to develop, well, we already kind of developed a plan, but we really want to keep the momentum with these discerners high. We want them to come to our events. We want them to have coaching and prayer. We just want them to know us and to use our office as a resource, and the priest around us as a resource in guiding them in their vocational journey. We don't, even though, of course, we're interested in finding diocesan priests, obviously we don't just work with those who have a call to diocesan priesthood. If that was the case, we would just work with seminarians or a very select group of men. But really, the majority of our events are for everybody who's single between the ages of 18 and 35. We're trying to just kind of work with a large group of people, because we know that somewhere in there are people who have vocations, and we can help them sort that out. I just sent an email to Father Rick Kramer, who's the vocation director of the Ordinariate, about a man who's from a parish of the Ordinariate, who's a convert, who asked our office for help and said, like, Father Rick, you might be interested in talking to this young man because he's asking about priesthood and he's from your parish or something like that. The other desire is to have names that we can reach out to. So this is something that I'm trying to reach out to brother priests about, and youth ministers and young adult ministers, is at the end of the day, personal invitations to events are very powerful. If we want the right people to come to our retreats, we almost have to know who they are and literally ask them, would you be willing to take your vocation seriously enough to come to Verbum Tuum, which is a group that we have here in the Archdiocese starting later this month. So the idea is that at the end of the day, we also just want people, serious discerners, to be equipped and informed and to feel accompanied. There's kind of this final slide here of things that we're trying to do in collaboration. We're really trying to inform clergy and collaborators to introduce and promote vocations in their circles, right? So I can't be at your parish in spring talking about vocations very often, but maybe you can, and maybe Father James and Father David Michael, the people who are already in that local area trying to work in it, maybe we can just get them to add vocational messages to their general homilies or things like that. We're also trying to identify those young men and those young women who are seeking the Lord seriously, because they're the right people to move on a next step in our process and to start coming to our events or getting mentored by a spiritual director or something like that. We're hoping to provide guidance and formation for those young people with all those priests and spiritual directors. And at the end of the day, our final goal for like that tier 4 is just to accompany them and do that well. So you have all the strategic plan and all these slides in that little booklet. Let's go ahead and maybe we'll just say a quick prayer. In the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit, amen. God our Father, you call us, each of us, to use our gifts in the body of Christ. We ask that you inspire those whom you call to priesthood, diaconate, and consecrated life. Courageously follow your will. Send workers into your great harvest, so that the gospel is preached, the poor are served with love, the suffering are comforted, and we are strengthened by the sacraments. Christ our Lord. Amen. Thank you. So if you had any questions, I'll be around through lunch. And of course, you can always reach me at the Office of Vocations. Oh.